Okay. Chibbity, 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 chibbity. Chim. Skittering, kidding. Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not. That's allowed. Okay. Sorry guys, just double checking, making sure we are live. Because I don't want to start. Well, yeah, doesn't really matter. Let's not delve into that. I swear, while I'm looking for the live, I might as well tell you guys. I literally almost didn't even do a thumbnail for this video. Because it seems like every single time I try to make a decent ass thumbnail, now all of a sudden all the programs don't work. Now all of a sudden every single program wonder. So it hasn't started my multi-streaming because I tried to multi-stream onto other apps. It did start my YouTube stream, so I mean I'm not mad, but it'd be cool if the multi-stream started too. Because that way I'd be able to tell I'd be able to utilize all of them at one go, and that's the way things should, you know. So, anyways, I'll sort that out next time, because I don't want to spend too much time on something that is going to stuff me around and just postpone the video. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I said that I was going to deal with it, and then I decided to try and deal with it now because I thought maybe I might be able to deal with it in a quick way. I don't know. Don't mind me, that was a hideous noise. Very hideous. Anywho, so today, as you guys can see from the title, we are getting into the nitty-gritties right now. We're talking about why anti-paganism, anti-witchcraft. Whenever you say, oh, witchcraft, paganism is the devil, you're worshipping the devil. If you worship any other god other than the Christian or the Muslim god or whatever god you believe in, then all of a sudden now you're a devil worshipper, right? No. Let me first preface this video by saying that everything, and I mean everything, is native hobbyism, alright? So when it comes to anything, including anti-paganism, this is a mockery of native hobbyism, alright? So this is talking about you and your inability to actually realize what the Native Americans are practicing within their culture, okay? So you might think to yourself, oh, how can that be anti-native hobbyism? Or how can everything be native hobbyism? It's important to pay attention to the concepts that certain cultures uphold naturally in a natural sense, right? And when it comes to native hobbyism, the world is actually built off the template of native hobbyism in general. Okay, so a lot of people don't actually realize that they're running off the template of native hobbyism. And that's the whole witchcraft of, like, even tying it down to gangs or the police, how they have the red and the blue colors. The red represents the Redskins, the red Indians and Native Americans. All right, so, and this is why they even have those templates of the red and the blue, especially when it comes to your gangs. You got your Bloods and your Crips, and in New Zealand you have the Black Power and the Mongrel Mob. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Mongrel Mob is red, right? I think so. And then Black Power is blue. Okay, so this is again, Mongrel Mob is a representation of the Native American Indians. Blue, anything blue, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mongrel Mob is blue. I could be wrong. Blue is a representation of the Europeans because blue represents the blue people or the blue bloods, which is really just talking about their internal natures, but also talking about their phenotype, because Native Americans had red skin, but it was a representation of them having like a golden, it's really a golden tone to their skin. It's a golden look that they have, right? And they called this red when they would come to the Americas. And then they built a whole bunch of different systems based on their interactions with the Native Americans and being able to observe the Native American culture. Because in Europe, pre-colonial times, Europe did not have any concept of paganism, of witchcraft. They might have had some kind of concepts of witchcraft, but this is not a widespread thing within their culture. Europe, they have buildings, they have structures, they have order, they have Saturn-like concepts, right? If you know anything about Saturn and astrology, Saturn is talking about like organization, systematic energies, right? So this is why in Europe, pre-colonial times, you always hear about their systems and their monarchies, especially those really brutal monarchies that you hear about. Like Europe was no shit, like absolute, they'll kill you in a second type energy. So if you were to defect or go against the government, the Europeans, they'd be the types to just like torture you. That's why you have all those medieval torture methods, or like just those brutal regimes of certain people in Europe. And it wasn't till they invaded and actually started to colonize the Americas, they started to learn spiritual systems of the Native Americans and how to respect people, how to actually go about things with a little bit more honor, how to have a little bit more of a moral standing in what you're doing in life. So this is actually what they learned from the Native Americans, and in observing their culture and how they actually have a certain system of working with the natural order, working with the natural state of the land. This is why Native Americans always had wore like animal regalia, or whatever you would call it, animal feathers, animal bones, and so on and so forth, because it was a representation of their connection to that specific animal energy wise via native animism, which is a representation, and animism is just a way of them observing the characteristics of an animal. So like how they have the tortoise and the hare, that's a form of Native American animism. So the tortoise represents someone who's patient, who's someone who takes their time in going about things, right? And the hare represents someone who's impatient, someone who just wants to get things done and may not actually take the time to care for the little things that actually matter, right? So these are all forms of Native American animism, because you're analyzing the characteristics of the animal, and then you're able to utilize those characteristics to better your own state of being, even as a human. So you're taking something that's lesser than you, something that you've already grown out of as a spirit, and you're expanding it and growing it into something new, which can be utilized now with your new vessel, via Native American animism. And at the end of the day, we all have this ability, but it originated with Native American culture. So we have to know where things come from. And if you want to say, oh, well, no, there was pagans and there was witches and Europe pre-colonial times, we don't see that nowadays. We don't see any culture in Europe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't see any cultures in Europe that practice what the Native American people culture practice, or the Maori culture practice, or the Aboriginal Australian cultures practice, which is a form of, in European culture, they would class it as nature worship. In European culture, they will class it as a matriarchal society. This is what they called the Maori as well. They called the Native American people matriarchal society. But keeping in mind that they actually came into contact with the Maori and the Aboriginal people after their dealings with Native American people. So in their saying that Maori culture and I don't know about Aboriginal culture, but any Aboriginal people, you guys can pick up on that area. But for Maori culture, they described us as matriarchal, partly due to the fact that they just saw us as another version of the Native Americans, because they saw us with, for example, feathers in our hair. They saw the way that we worked with nature and tried to honor nature and respect nature. But not only that, our ability to be able to call certain things within nature characteristics, which is why we have Papatuanuku, which represents Mother Earth, or Ranginui, which represents the sky, or Father Sky. So all of these things are ways of animism that Maori and Native American people practice traditionally. And in European ideologies, like such as Christianity or Muslim, these things are actually deemed and coined the term pagan or witchcraft or nature worship, but these are not even that. We don't worship nature. We acknowledge the energy and the characteristics that nature holds, and we know that these things stem from a mental state or certain characteristics that we're in mentally. So in order for us to say we are one and the same, like in Maori culture, whenua means the land, but it also means the placenta, right? So the placenta and whenua, the connection there is that when you are on a land, you are like basically within the womb of Mother Papatuanuku. This is why they call it Papatuanuku. So you're inside of a womb, inside of a body, aka just like how the womb nourishes you, but you also have a symbiotic relationship with the womb. Because without you being nourished by the womb, you wouldn't be able to come out of the womb and be able to express and be alive outside of the womb, in order for you to be able to experience your mother now that you're outside of her, right? So it's like that symbiotic relationship that we have with the land and with our womb and with our mother, in order for us to feel nurtured and grow and expand into the next existence, aka outside of your mother's womb. So when we're talking in culture about Papatuanuku, aka Mother Earth, in Native American and Maori cultures, this is actually talking about our connection to the land, and how just it's like this saying in Maori, Whatu ngaro ngaro te tangatanga, toitu te whenua. So basically, loosely translated, that just means that man and woman will come and go. People will come and go, which is tangata. Tangata represents people. So whatu ngaro ngaro, which is like disappearing or like vanishing. So people will vanish and disappear, but the land remains always. So it's talking about what kind of impact are you making on the land? How are you connecting to the land and relating to the land in order for you to leave some form of legacy or some form of something that's long standing? So You know, when this is what indigenous and Maori, Native American cultures knew already. They knew to respect the land, and even Europeans to a certain extent. They know that the land is important, which is why, in the first place, they feel the need to even take over the land and eradicate the culture of the people that live on the land. So, when it's talking about all of these different things, when you're saying paganism, or specifically paganism, but witchcraft too, when you're saying that these things are bad, these are natural cultural traditions that we enact being indigenous to our land in New Zealand and in America and partly in Australia. But I can't speak for Aboriginals because I don't know much. I can't even speak for Native American people because I'm not Native American. So, at least not in this vessel. That's another video. I don't want to talk about that. That's something private to me. But when you exhibit certain characteristics of a certain ethnic background, it's possible that you could have ties to that background in order for you to have those characteristics and those mental forms, which is why I'm sitting here and speaking, and I sound like European in the way that I speak because my words are enunciated right, because this is the amount of European blood that I actually have within my system. And you even may not even have that much European blood, but you may speak the same as me and enunciate and pronounce your words similar to me, which is a sign that that may be more of a percentage scale within your mental states for you to be able to express that in your physical body. But regardless, that's a little bit on a tangent. When it comes to paganism, paganism is just a term coined to demonize and go against the cultures that practice this as a natural state, because in our culture, it is not witchcraft. It is not talking about anything to do with paganism. It is just respecting and acknowledging the way that life is and acknowledging that we are one and the same with nature. Just like, you know, if you treat nature like shit, how is nature going to be able to grow and sustain and build up something that's substantial for you to be able to fulfill your family, feed your home, grow and maintain your community, and so on and so forth? So without nature, we wouldn't even have a community to be able to grow, because how are you supposed to get any resources if the resources have all been stripped dry and there's no longer nature? Like, so this is some basic, real basic, simple understanding of shit that we as indigenous people already knew prior to colonization and even now to this day. But a lot of people get disconnected from that knowledge, and then they hear stories about Papatūānuku and Ranginui, and they think stuff like, oh, you guys worship nature gods, you guys worship nature. But in actuality, it's nothing to do with worshipping nature. It's about acknowledging and being able to see the natural characteristics that will exhibit within nature, right? And then being able to play those out or utilize them in the best way that we can, because we're now analyzing the characters. Because actually at the end of the day, everything is subjective then objective. So when we're seeing our subjective point of view of what nature looks like and how nature acts and how we should treat nature, then we're able to objectively, aka create an object, or aka have an objective point of view about how things should be, or how things should be played out in a moral sense, right? So when we're analyzing nature and the characteristics, this is giving us the subjective point of view to objectively make choices about our life and our reality. So this is how we built our certain moral or mental systems off of, because we're analyzing the subjective point of views, and we're able to develop an objective point of view that is in balance, because we've looked at it from a subjective first, not an objective, which is a lot of people in the modern world try to delve into. It's like all that objective energy, they want to jump straight into the objective and then not worry about the subjective, or jump straight into the objective and then jump into the subjective after, and then leaves people thinking that they don't know anything or they have no knowledge about the world, when in actuality you have all the knowledge about the world. You're just looking at it from the objective first, aka the object that someone gave you in order to interpret the world outside of you. So you're looking at, oh, the piece of paper, you know what I mean? The written language that people have given you in order for you to be able to interpret what's going on around you. And then boom, you're lost. And you think that's the only way to be able to find something out is through like someone's objective point of view. But in order for them to even come up with that objective point of view, they had to have been in a subjective place in the first place. So don't get it twisted ever when you're thinking that objective and then subjective is the right way to go. No, you're going to go at things backwards, and then you're going to end up going around and around in circles, feeling like you're actually not getting anywhere, because you're not. You're not actually getting to the point that it's subjective then objective first. And in no realm of reality, not ever in existence, will you be able to exhibit or observe objective then subjective. Like, the only way you can observe that is if you're in your mind and you're imagining shit at the end of the day. So when it comes to, all these topics, as you can see, these are just ways to actually colonize and destroy the cultures of indigenous people by saying and demonizing paganism, witchcraft, and all these kind of things. And even up until modern times, nowadays we have spirituality. And don't get me wrong, there's a good and a bad in everything, and spirituality definitely has its benefits. But we need to keep in mind as well, nowadays the spirituality is being flushed out what is it called? Washed out with a whole bunch of people who are doing it just for fun, in a hobby kind of way, right? Not in a serious kind of way, or not in a way which is natural to the natural order of things, which is what I was just talking about. When you're exhibiting the natural characteristics that you see in nature and so on and so forth, that's when you're actually able to experience and reap the benefits of said nature, of said characteristic. But a lot of people are getting into spirituality, they don't even know how to read character, let alone jump into that said character and act it out. And then on top of that, they're not even respecting nature or getting in tune with nature. Their form of getting in tune with spirituality is through an object, is through someone's tarot, someone's astrology book that they did. And I'm not saying that astrology or tarot is bad, but they are native hobbyism. So you need to realize that at the end of the day, it was a native person, it was an indigenous American that first made up the concept or brought about the concept to the Europeans of divination, of being able to read energies, signs, symbols, characteristics. As you can see, these are all forms of animism, right? And cultures that naturally practice animism already had this practice as an oral tradition being passed down from generations. In Māori culture, we call them tohunga. And there was also ariki, which is just our words for chief. In Native American culture, that is what they call it, a chief. They call themselves chief. So even in the English language, these are all words that's being adopted, aka native hobbyism, from native culture. Chief, commander, what else? All of those kind of words are Native American hobbyism. Native Americans were actually chiefs. They were actually commanders. They were actually like in those positions within their communities. And nowadays, like the Europeans, they just try to like kind of jump and utilize that character for their own benefit. But it's not about pointing blame and pointing fingers, though in some areas you can, but this is not the video that I'm making for that. It's actually really just about being aware of what you're actually doing and what you're actually practicing on a day-to-day basis. Because you may be practicing racism, like I say in the title, without even realizing it. when you go about into the world and you think to yourself, or you say to yourself that paganism or witchcraft is the devil worship, or is evil, or is anti against God. No, you need to realize that actually this God that a lot of people are talking about has nothing to do with nature, has nothing to do with the natural way of how things are exhibited. But yet you guys like to say and turn around and say, oh, well, this God had everything to do with creating nature. But yet we don't even see its characteristics within nature. I don't see no God that's jealous in nature. That's nothing I exhibit or see in nature, in the natural order of things. Maybe with certain domestic animals, they might get jealous, but keep in mind they're domesticated. The same with humans. So when you're talking about domesticated energies, those are not natural, right? Because they've been domesticated, aka disconnected from a natural sense of things, or a natural order of things, aka their natural habitat. So when it comes to those energies, those are all domesticated type energies, aka non-natural. And in our culture, in our tradition, that is actually against God. So like it's literally like a reverse psychology thing that they try to pull on you, the Europeans, where they try to make you guys think that what we're doing as a natural culture tradition is against God, when in actuality, where the way we're looking at it is from a natural perspective. We're observing nature and the characteristics, the natural way that things run in life, right? Which is what you guys try to say your God created. But if your God created it, then where's the characteristics of your God within it in order for it to be a creation of it? And in saying that as well, how do you connect and correlate your God to things we see in everyday life, in nature? And you can't just say, oh, well, look how everything is run. It's got a perfect order and a perfect structure and a perfect ecosystem. Okay, humans can make structure and order and ecosystem. Like animals can make structure and order and ecosystem. But that's not to say that those things are both exhibiting characteristics of God, because humans can use structure and order and ecosystems in a negative way. So it doesn't have any basis of explaining the characteristics of said God, which is really just all possibilities at the end of the day. God is a tainted term to use because it's got a lot of weight and a lot of history to it, whereas all possibilities is a representation of a space that's open and all possible, aka anything can happen, anything can be created, anything can be possible in this concept. And that's true God, because at the end of the day is bringing things new into reality, and it's a characteristic that we exhibit constantly in nature, aka change and transformation. Change is the only thing that's constant in life. So when you get stuck into one way of thinking, one mind, one perspective, you're going against nature, actually, and the natural order of life. And in turn, that's going to bite you in the butt, because now you're going to be experiencing a whole bunch of shit that's not natural, aka getting sick with the flu, getting cancer, getting diseases, or what else? What's another thing that I can talk about? Going bald. Like, you don't see half the people from backgrounds that are non-European or backgrounds that are indigenous ever losing their hair. In fact, they keep their hair. Maori people, Native American people, be keeping their hair all the way up until they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. So just that alone shows you what kind of space they're in order to be developing certain characteristics, and for their hair to fall out at such an early age, because they're disconnected from something that's meant to be natural and is meant to help them to grow and evolve as a spirit. And they're disconnected from that, so they're going to experience the repercussions of the energy they're in, which is a disconnected energy. disconnected from a natural order energy. And so then now their hair disconnects from their head. You know what I mean? They're a tumor, aka something that's abnormal, is not meant to even grow in your body, starts growing in certain areas that it's not meant to be. So these are all forms and representations of things not being where they're meant to be, things being displaced, things being out of their natural order and space that they should be correlated in. So, these are all ways of how being disconnected from nature will really start to damage your mental and then damage your physical as well, due to you already being mentally damaged. And it started with the disconnection from nature in the first place. So yeah, I'll be back because I need to take a go toilet. Take a So welcome. She's back. They're back. Yeah, anyways, I'm not a they, but you can call me whatever you want, honey. No jokes. So when it comes to this topic, yeah, it's really boils down to racism at the end of the day. It does not go any further than that. And if you feel like and think that it goes any further than racism, I'm open to debate and oppositions in the comments, but you can't go against it. There's so many sources, so many references that I could go through to show that anti-paganism, anti-witchcraft, and I'll even go so far as to say Christianity is forms of racism and has major forms of racism in them, and are actually used to perpetuate colonism, right? So this is why when they colonize certain countries, they force you to go under the church. They force you to register under the Catholic or the Christian church, because they want you guys to be colonized under their mind state, under their God, right? Which they call their mind state God. And they is just a representation of the people who colonize, the Freemasons, whatever group you want to call them. The name doesn't really matter. It's just those people. They know who the fuck they are. And so when it comes down to them exercising their colonialism on us, now people feel guilty for practicing their traditional cultural practices, which is what happened 30, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago in New Zealand. They banned our languages, they banned our cultural tradition, they even banned tohunga, which is a a form of a shaman. Basically, in Maori culture, we call them tohunga, but that's not exclusive. Tohunga means many different things, but tohunga can be something like a shaman as well as many other different things. But tohunga at its root really just means someone who has mastered or who has basically like an expert. An expert is like a white way of saying it, but it's like a form of someone who's expertly mastered something or come to a very high degree of something, right? So when you know about tohunga and how they literally outlawed these practices back in 30 to 40 to 50 years ago, this is literally like the only example in reality that we can point to of people actually exhibiting these practices in real life. There wasn't no time in Europe, like they say in the history books, like what in Europe, like 30 to 40 3 to 400 years ago, or however long ago it was, they reckon there was like witch hunts and stuff. Mind you, now that I think about it, that shit was in America. They don't they say that? The Salem witch trials, all that stuff. So those were just really just ways of them trying to outlaw and hunt down Native American people. So any kind of witch trial or all that kind of stuff, the only people that was practicing any form of witchcraft or paganism back in those days, especially in America, was Native Americans. And anybody who was in either had a connection to the Native Americans or who lived with them. Regardless, though, you had to have some kind of ties to Native Americans in order for you to even learn or know about those practices. Because pre-colonialism, the Europeans, they didn't practice that shit. They had jobs, they had all kinds of stuff in Europe. But, they didn't have freaking witchcraft or paganism, especially not no nature worship. Like, if they really respected and revered nature, because at the end of the day, it's not nature worship. It's just about respecting the land that you're on, respecting the connection that you have to the land. If they really had that, then they wouldn't have destroyed and wanted to leave their land in the first place, to even come to another country overseas in order for them to settle and develop a connection to the land that they're on now. Like, this comes from you having a disconnect with your land in the first place, right? So you have to know what kind of starting point people are actually in mentally, and then you'll be able to actually understand how history is playing out and why it's playing out. And shout out to Dollar Pilot Man as well, because he's the one who even put me onto the native hobbyism. So if you want to learn more about native hobbyism, you gotta go check out his channel. Only channel that you should be watching when it comes to native hobbyism in terms of explaining it. But if you just want to do your own personal research and you don't want to hear someone explain native hobbyism, just search up any Native American person talking about their culture online. I guarantee you will start to hear how similar it is to everything that the white man tries to push and the agendas they try to push, but it's like a diluted, tainted version of their culture. So it's like some weird shit. Even in New Zealand, they do the same shit. Like, they try to push the whole go green and sustainable living type shit. Like, that's how fucking Māori lived normally. So it's like they take your culture, they ban you from actually expressing it or experiencing it, and then once they feel like, oh yeah, these Māori people have stopped practicing their culture, that's when they pull it out of the woodworks again and try to utilize it as something for everyone to practice, but in the white man way now, aka in the European colonized way, which is not actually the practice. It's just a act of Māori hobbyism or Native American hobbyism, or whatever country soil you're on. It's that kind of hobbyism, aka them acting like they actually enjoy or do the things that you guys do, your ethnic background, but in actuality they don't do it. That's why it's called hobbyism. It's just a hobby. It's something they do for fun, something they don't actually live and breathe and experience on a day-to-day basis. I actually think and feel in these certain ways, which is why I feel so open to even express and talk about Maori culture and our traditions and stuff like that. But personally, me, I didn't grow up even knowing half of these things. There were definitely, I would say, me personally, more than other Maori that I knew growing up, I did know a little bit more about the culture than certain other Maori that I had seen growing up. But I never considered myself in the past to be someone who was actually connected or had some kind of knowledge about the culture until very recently. I'm starting to realize, actually, yeah, I'm back. Like Dolo says, I'm back, and I'm realizing my own place and how my own ability to be aware of certain things within my culture is just that. It's my footprints in the sand. It's by me being aware of it in my reality, I had some part to play in creating that thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be aware of it. Which is why so many other people, maybe from the same exact background, same exact phenotype as me, but they don't talk like me. They don't think like me. They're not up here talking about how paganism is racism, But in saying that, there are those Maori people out there, and there are those Indigenous people out there that do think and feel in this way. But for someone like me, it takes someone like me to actually get up on this platform and openly express this, and then that'll help to create a domino effect where those other people out there in the world that do think this way can feel a little bit more comfortable and have a little bit more of something to stand on when they do express this to the world, because now they know that anti-paganism and anti-witchcraft is a form of racism and a form of colonialism. So when you go out into the world and you say that, oh, this is devil worship and this is blah, 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 this is all tying back to Native American hobbyism. They called the Native American people devils first. They called them devil worshippers and all those kind of derogatory terms because of how they dressed up like animals, and they did certain rituals and made certain noises around the campfire. This is them like even with the whole witchcraft thing as well. Like that's their way of mockery by doing that whole witches dancing around the fireplace naked in the moonlight. Like this is a form of Native American hobbyism to demonize Native American people, and to say like that's why they even made the demons have certain animal characteristics. Because a lot of people will be like, oh, how do you know that they termed the Native Americans as demons? Look at what the Native Americans do. They wear certain animal parts. Same with Maori people. We have like our bone necklaces, our bone carvings, and other such things. So, they saw these characteristics and they were like, they started to create something called a demon, right? Now you've got demons out in the world that people talk about, which is really just a representation of how the Europeans saw the indigenous people when they came over from their country. They were like, oh, look at these people dressing up like animals. They got what's it called? They got bones around their neck and blah blah blah, and they got horns and so on and so forth. This is them saying, now they're turning around and saying, oh, like this is demonic, this is evil, this is blah blah blah. So this is something they're trying to reject and push against their culture and say that this is wrong. But it's really just comes from observing the natural culture of the people of the land that they're on. So at the end of the day, there's no other examples in reality of these certain characteristics and these certain circumstances that I'm explaining to you. So there's no other way you can point to it other than to point to what we see now today. The Native Americans, the Maori, and the Aboriginal people being colonized and wiped out. and their practices and cultural beliefs being destroyed because now it's being demonized and termed as unmoral or subhuman or less than, all the way down to now nowadays people like even look down on certain practices that are not European, because that was the template that they had everybody under. They wanted you guys to demonize and look against anything that was non-European, aka which is just representing logic, left brain energies, being able to square out a circle, like all of those kind of like orderly and structured writing on paper with yeah, like all that kind of energy, like all that symbolism that I just went through. Like you can pretty well like interpret what I was expressing just then, and it's nothing to do with derogatory or mockery. That's just the way the energy exhibits itself, right? So when you talk about those kind of characteristics, that's what they've got everybody in the world lost into. Whether you can admit it or not, you're still exhibiting those characteristics in some way, shape, or form. Because you went to school, you're probably studying to get a PhD right the fuck now to go, like that guy says in like that guy says in that ad, he's like he wanted to be a scientist for NASA, and he said he wanted to take it one step further and help out his people, but really, and just you even studying to go to university, get a PhD, you're going against your people, and you may not realize how deep that goes. But put it in simple terms, instead of focusing on practicing your culture and carrying on any oral tradition or creating a new culture, you're upholding someone else's culture, someone else's ideology that they went to, that they created a university for. Instead of creating your own university where you can teach other people about multiculture or about creating their own culture or community, now you're learning about how someone else created their own community and their own way of thinking, aka NASA. Like, so that's where a lot of people fail to realize that they're going against something that they should naturally just be doing themselves by indulging into something that someone else did naturally by themselves. And now you think that's the right thing to do because someone else created it and it looks good. But you're supposed to create something that looks good too. So, like, where are you taking this? So yeah, when it comes to, you know, those things being racism, you can obviously see how when you exhibit these certain characteristics and you demonize certain energies, certain cultures, or certain energies in the first place, you're demonizing certain cultures without actually realizing it. You're actually perpetuating colonism. You're actually perpetuating our cultures being wiped out by saying that these things are evil or these things are wrong and that you should go against them. You're actually perpetuating other people to think in ways that's actually racist, whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. You know, you may be in denial because you've lived your whole life being taught about God and Christianity, but go look up a Native American person online right now. I can guarantee you'll start to be like, hold on, this sounds a lot like the Bible. That's because that's where they got it from. Native American didn't write down no Bible. They have an oral tradition that's long-standing, has been passed down from generations to generations. So that's just their culture, their practices, their tradition. So, you know, get right in your mind, realize that you are part of the problem when you are talking about demonizing certain aspects of our culture, aka us being able to be in tune and connect with nature, us being able to observe characteristics within nature via Native American animism. So it doesn't matter which way you slice it, which way you look at it, all right, at the end of the day, know what you're doing and know that it's not right. It's not something you should continue perpetuating. You're actually just helping the white man to take over the country more quickly via you, when actually they're working against you too in order for you to even be in the position that you are, having to work 5 days a week just for crumbs, and then having to still pay bills, even though you already fucking work to help perpetuate the system in the first place, that now you have to go pay bills to live in a house that you probably freaking built or your uncle probably freaking built. So at the end of the day, it's just a way for them to earn off you, off the backs of real people that are living real lives, and then you get crumbs for it. But yeah, anyways, I will probably end this one here now because I want to go to sleep now. It's freaking 2 a.m. where I'm at. And I will talk about this in another video. Actually can't wait to delve deeper into this topic with you guys. But this is more of an introductory kind of video because I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork of what I'm about to start talking about when it comes to Māori culture, Native American hobbyism, so on and so forth. But yeah, this is an introduction, groundwork, foundational energy of talking about the topic that I'm about to talk about. I'm about to go in on this shit, and people are about to actually get aware of how Māori culture and why Māori culture is being eradicated and destroyed, and how Māori culture is actually built and sustained, and what it actually stems out of, right? Okay, peace.